Iran nuclear deal inked by the Obama administration comes from the Cato Institute. The author, these libertarians, the author, Emma Ashford, writes, instead, she writes about what Trump did rather than trying to fix it, nixing it. By blowing up the nuclear deal without offering any clear strategy or plan for an alternative, Donald Trump is opening Pandora's box, increasing the risks of escalation, bring us gradually closer to conflict with Iran. Point of order, as the designated lead state sponsor of terrorism the world over, we're sort of already in conflict with Iran. But okay. The act of refusing to waive sanctions itself will deter companies from investing in Iran and place European governments in a very difficult situation. Boo-hoo. Stop doing business with Iran, European governments. Conflict between the U.S. and Iran may not happen. We could get lucky, but Trump's choice raises that risk substantially. I don't see it that way at all. Beyond just the fact that Trump telegraphed this for the last 2 years, and so those feigning surprise shouldn't be. Beyond the fact that I'll put my bets on taking a hostile position with Iran, given what we know. I mean, this morning, Houthi rebels in Yemen reportedly targeting Riyadh with missile strikes. Of course, they're Iranian-backed.
You have members of Iranian parliament chanting "Death to America," burning a picture of an American flag. They're just having a temper tantrum because they're not getting the bags of cash anymore.
Well, they do it 3 times a week. I mean, that's just, but exactly. Precisely. So I'll place my bet, if you will, on taking a transparent and adversarial position with respect to Iran as compared to believing the propaganda ricocheting through the echo chamber that Ben Rhodes and Obama's foreign policy impresarios created, as Ben Rhodes documented, to snooker the American people about this deal. But that's me. I'm not at the Cato Institute, which, boy, this is an embarrassing piece for the Cato Institute to post on their website. For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by Bill Gertz, who is a senior editor for the Washington Free Beacon, and he's also the author of the book I War and Peace in the Information Age. Bill, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hi, good to be on the program.
Well, so rather than, just kind of going between John Kerry and former Obama flacks and Republicans, I thought the Cato Institute piece was more interesting and provocative because of, its sourcing. So where do you fall on the decision Trump made and the explanation for it yesterday?
Well, this is a great step forward in getting rid of the biggest sponsor of state terrorism in the world today. For one thing, as I noted in my book, I War, the Obama administration completely dropped the ball back in 2009 when there was basically a popular revolt against the mullahs. And rather than support that popular revolt, Obama supported the theocracy in Tehran, hoping even back then that he would get some kind of deal to try to bring Iran back into the international system. It's a false premise. I mean, the Iranians are not going to be stakeholders in the world system because they're a revolutionary regime that wants to upend that world system. It's the same false strategy that was applied to China. Oh, let's make China a responsible stakeholder in the international system, and that will moderate its behavior. Totally failed, and I think the same happened with the Iran deal.
Does the president of Iran, Rouhani, is he taking a measured tone to this? And do you think that there's hope in his mind that this deal will be preserved or come back?
No, I think the real payoff for me was the fact that the Israelis were able to expose that the Iranian nuclear program never really ended. And that the deal was based on a lie. The fundamental lie was the International Atomic Energy Agency, all of the nations that signed up to the deal agreed that Iran never had a nuclear program, when in fact they did, and they preserved all the documents and the equipment that they have, and that they had enough leeway in the deal to actually continue developing the technology for their nuclear program. As I like to say, I've seen this movie before in North Korea back in '94 when we did the Green Framework. It was declared as the end of the North Korea nuclear program, and it was a total deception by the North Koreans to buy time and build up their nuclear arsenal. I think the Iranians were doing the same thing.
Well, clearly, that's per all the intel that the Israelis got, and I'm sort of incredulous at the reporting of this. Like it's the hope of the Obama administration versus the recklessness of Trump. That's sort of the dichotomy that the cowboyism of Trump. That's sort of the dichotomy that the D.C. press corps is presenting, just waving off everything that Prime Minister Netanyahu presented to the world last week.
Yeah, I mean, it was in the Washington lexicon, it was an intelligence coup to be able to get all of that material and then make it public. The pro-Obama people, the Ben Rhodeses and those people who wanted to preserve the Iran deal above all else, were really caught flat-footed. Their response to it was, well, this is nothing new. Well, it was new to most of the people of the world. It was not new to the people within the Obama administration who hid that intelligence, who knew about this program and basically lied to the American people about the extent of the Iranian nuclear program prior to the 2015 Iran deal.
Well, the Iran deal seemed defective at its core. So what's the next move here?
Well, I think the first step should be, and it was kind of stated in the president's speech, he's supporting the Iranian people, and I think this is the first step in really bringing about the peaceful transition to a non-theocratic state, a non-terrorist supporting state in Iran. I advocated this in my book, I War. We have the tools, the information tools. It doesn't have to be a military confrontation. And, of course, all of the pro-nuclear deal supporters in the U.S. and elsewhere are saying, oh, this is a step towards war with Iran. We're already at war. It's an information war, and I think we should wage information war on them, expose their leaders, expose their terrorist activities, expose the number of Americans that have been killed at the hands of Iranian weapons around the Middle East and the world.
But when you say this is a first step to a non-theocratic Iran, is that the first step in a journey of 1,000 miles? I mean, that doesn't seem like it's in the offing anytime soon.
Oh, I think it will. I think it will happen within the next 5 to 10 years.
Really?
We'll see. Yeah, the Iranian people do not want to live under a theocratic state that supports terrorism around the world. And again, going back to 2009, there was a chance to help them get rid of the regime, even though they were somewhat not necessarily completely pro-Western opposition. They were definitely opposing the theocratic state.
Well, what are your thoughts on President Trump putting sanctions against companies who do business with Iran?
Well,
whether they be American companies or European companies.
Yeah, they've given. Well, it's going to cost. Boeing is trying to sell planes to Iran. Look, the Iranians, the American companies have they have a period of time. They have to wind down. It could be 6 months. Under the deals that they did under the nuclear arrangement are going to be cut back. They're going to have a chance to cut them off. And of course, I'm not sure the Europeans are going to go along with it. They're still part of the deal, so they're going to still be doing business. But I think that it will have an impact. Iran is a weak state. It's going to get weaker. The sanctions were hurting it. And by lifting the sanctions, it helped the Iranians to continue the nefarious activities that they're doing.
$100 billion in cash and a $35 billion a year oil industry. I'd say that helped. And I guess my point, too, is this debate I see on the Beltway, sanctions or no sanctions. What if there is the lead state sponsor of terror in the world, which is not in dispute, then what are we even talking about? Of course we're going to impose sanctions. Why would we want to be facilitating a country that we say is the lead state sponsor of terror in the world? How about some common sense here?
Absolutely. I think you're totally correct on that. And so they're ratcheting up the sanctions again. Again, they're going to be U.S. sanctions, and it will have an impact. Eventually, the Europeans will have to get in line with those sanctions because the U.S. has control over a lot of the dollars that are moving. And if the Treasury Department says that if you do business with Iranian companies, you can't do business with the U.S. or U.S. banks, it's going to have a huge impact in preventing those companies and countries from supporting this terrorist regime.
He is Bill Gertz, senior editor for the Washington Free Beacon. The book, I War and Peace in the Information Age. Bill, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.